everyone.
Hey,
Hi, everyone. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm still breathing. That's a good sign.
Good to see you. Good to have you here.
You too. Good to see you. Cup of coffee going. We're good to go.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes to see who else comes in. Let me share the screen or get some other things set up here. Today is a Twitter action, so hopefully all of you, if you didn't have Twitter before, have made a Twitter profile to use for today. And so as we get started, I'm sending you guys a link to a tweet I have with the link to this action. So you can go ahead and retweet it with a little note like, we're about to get started. Register here to join. Past New York Health, no Medicaid cuts. So let's see. What else do I want to do? Is anyone here today brand new to Twitter, have never tweeted before, you made a profile just for this action? That'll be helpful for me to know in the pace that I take. Oh, thank you so much, Clarissa. That's awesome. Awesome, Wanda. Okay, great. So we'll go slow. Fantastic. And so if at any point today you guys have questions, you need me to repeat something, to do it over again, just let me know. I'm about to share my screen. So a lot of what we'll do today, you'll be able to watch me in real time. We are honored to be joined today by Scott Disnero, who is one of the most active New York Health Act activists out here on Twitter. So most of what I'm saying is going to be old news for him. So feel free to just like do whatever you want in the background, Scott, while we're doing the basic things. Let me share the screen with the PowerPoint that I made today. So we're going to be tweeting a lot at the New York Health Act holdouts and at Governor Cuomo. So like I'm going to teach people to tweet, and like the sample tweets we're using are all going to be New York Health Act, no Medicaid cut tweets is the idea that I had. And then I also wanted to show folks how to follow folks who tweet all the time about health issues to signal boost us and help get our message out to the people who we're trying to get in touch with. So let's see, I'm gonna share my screen, share with my Google Chrome. And great. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. So y'all can see the PowerPoint on your screens. Yeah, perfect. So I just wanted to share a teeny bit about myself, about I'm getting great. So I want to share a little bit about myself, how I got into health activism, and why I think it's so important that as COVID-19 is picking up pace here in New York, that folks learn how to use Twitter for health activism reasons. So I am a trained midwife, and I worked as a neonatal intensive care nurse in a segregated Black hospital in central Brooklyn. And New York has the worst racial health disparities of any state in the nation. So in New York City, Black women are 12 times more likely to die than white women of pregnancy-related causes. And Black babies are 3 times more likely to die before their first birthday. And nationwide, the disparities are much lower. So what I found out as I did research, working with the babies who made up these statistics, working in an all-Black hospital, what I found through research is that about half of the disparity between Black-white birth outcomes is because there's the worst quality of care provided at a concentrated set of minority-serving hospitals. So essentially in Brooklyn, there are 3 hospitals, SUNY Downstate, Kings County, and Brookdale Hospital, that are all between 70 to 90% Black serving, and they have been chronically underfunded by the state for years and decades, so that we are constantly understaffed and missing many necessary specialties and services. And so essentially what is happening is most white people go to better hospitals in New York City, and if they experience a complication, it's managed appropriately and they don't die. Whereas most Black people in New York City are going to one of these 3 hospitals, not most, but about half of Black people in New York, in Brooklyn, go to one of these 3 hospitals and receive, if they develop any kind of complications, we just don't have the staff and services and resources to provide appropriate care, and our outcomes are much worse and the mortality rates are much worse, and that is what ripples out to create population level healthcare disparities. So why is this so important right now that we're coming up with coronavirus, is because everyone is freaking out about hospital staffing and hospitals being overwhelmed. Well, we already have public hospitals that have been understaffed and overwhelmed for decades. We already have people who have been dying of care rationing because of underfunding and underinvestment into our health infrastructure. And now, as the coronavirus is happening and as the hospitals are being overwhelmed, the conversation in Albany is this somehow like crazy two-faced thing where Cuomo is getting a lot of credit for leading the response to coronavirus while simultaneously suggesting that we cut over $2 billion out of Medicaid spending, which is the money we use to provide health care to a vast majority of New Yorkers. So the typical response to such inequity should be mass protest and us getting together and having hearings and speaking out on these issues. However, the fact that the nature of the pandemic is that getting together doesn't work. So that's why we're going to be learning to Twitter to speak out on these issues today. Some glimmers of optimism. I think it's kind of a bleak situation in New York in that with the fact that we have the worst disparities. I forgot to mention, New York has the worst hospital quality of any state in the nation. Worse than Alabama, worse than Mississippi, worse than all of the states that Northerners usually like to shit on for having poor services. The actual quality that patients receive when they go into the hospital is significantly worse in New York compared to other states. And in New York City, all of our top tier hospitals have 2 and 3 stars for the quality of care that the patients actually receive. Whereas in any other major city, all of the best hospitals have 4 and 5 stars. So it's yikes that we have the worst hospitals and are the epicenter for a pandemic that is heavily reliant on having a good healthcare infrastructure. So that said, there are some reasons to be hopeful for what is happening about the situation in New York. And that is because New York as a state is the 12th largest economy in the world. We have over 100 billionaires that live in our state and over 44,000 multimillionaires. So 44,000 multimillionaires, they could all give us $1 million, still be rich, and we would have the money we would need to cover our health care. Other reasons to be slightly optimistic about what's going on in New York is the Democrats have the majority in the state legislature. So, can everyone make sure their microphone is muted for now, and then we can just unmute it if you want to share. So the state Senate, we have 64 members in the state Senate, and 40 of them are Democrats. We have 150 members in the state assembly, and that's analogous to, like, on a federal level, we have the Senate and Congress. On the state level, we have the Senate and the assembly. And we have 150 assembly members, and 103 of them are Democrats. And then the last reason we can be like the glimmer of hope for New York is that we are one vote away from passing universal guaranteed single payer health care in the state. So Medicare for all on a national stage is a huge uphill battle. We don't have the majority in both sides of the House. And it may not be possible for us to get a majority on both sides of the House in the near future because of things we won't get into today. But in New York, activists have been working for 3 decades on a single payer healthcare bill that would create a health insurance program for every New Yorker, with 0 copays, 0 deductibles, and that would offer equitable care to everybody. I had mentioned, I started off by saying that the quality of care at the segregated Black hospital where I worked was so bad. The main reason for that is because public insurance pays half as much as private insurance does. So hospitals that serve a disproportionate amount of people on public insurance have half as much money as the hospitals that only serve people who are on private insurance. And so if you have half as much money coming in, you just don't have the resources to hire all of the doctors and nurses you need to provide good care. If we go to single payer health care, it eliminates that funding disparity. And if the New York Health Act doesn't reimburse enough for hospitals to provide quality care, everyone's going to know about it because everyone's going to be affected, and we'll all have a motive to come together and improve it. As it stands now, it is the people who have already been oppressed and marginalized and who are poor and who don't have a lot of time and resources to fight the system who are experiencing the worst of our private, public, or no health insurance system. So what do we need to do for, how should we go forward? What can we do in response to COVID-19? We need to be paying attention to what our government is doing and making our voice heard loud and clear that we will not accept Medicaid cuts and austerity measures in a time where more and more New Yorkers are getting sicker and needing more health care. And we are going, so we need to push back against austerity measures. We need to get the New York Health Act passed. Like, we only need one person to change their mind to sign on to vote for this. And I think, like, we have a million compelling arguments to make to those people. We just need to be getting in touch with them and making them and putting pressure on them until we get their vote. And then something that I'm gonna be working on outside of today is to try and meet with legislators and try and get a disparity czar appointed to manage the coronavirus crisis, to make sure that Black and minority serving hospitals are not underfunded in the same way Governor Cuomo has seen fit to underfund us for the last several decades. I'm just waiting for, I think it's likely we're going to see large racial disparities in coronavirus deaths it's most likely going to be, or a large part of that is going to be the quality of care, that the lower quality of care offered at the places where Black people go to get health care. And I'm just waiting for the articles to come out to be like, do Black people's genes respond differently to coronavirus? Just completely ignoring the fact that we spend half as much money to take care of people, to take care of the neighborhoods where Black people live. So those are what we need to be doing during the coronavirus. And how are we going to do it? Through Twitter. So even before the pandemic happened, Twitter is and is a great place for activism. It is the social media platform where most politicians are, where most reporters are. Most state senators and assembly people are on Twitter. Most of them don't have a ton of followers. Like some of them have like 100 or 2 followers. At most, they have a couple thousand. On average, there's like a handful of them that have more than that. But for the most part, they don't have a lot of followers. And so Twitter is a forum where activists have direct access to those people in power. So I can just tweet at anybody, and exactly, Scott's saying he can test we can reach our politicians through Twitter for sure. We're saying like we're 1 vote short for the New York Health Act. We used to be 2 votes short, and the last vote we got to sign on was largely through social media pressure and activism. And the last pro for Twitter is that like it really gives a forum for people who otherwise are voiceless. You know, I personally was involved with multiple preventable patient deaths at the hospital where I worked, and I have tried to get more than 15 reporters to cover it with no success. But where I have been successful and where I have been able to get people's attentions is by tweeting about it. I don't know if, Scott, would you want to share a little bit about your story and how you used Twitter?
Absolutely. You want me to tell the whole story? I mean,
as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh, absolutely. I've been through it a million times, sadly. All right. Yeah. I became active actually almost a year ago, back on April 9th. It was just about this time last year that my son had come in to move in with me. He was 29 years old, and he had a domestic dispute with his baby's mom. And there's police involved, and there's an order of protection put in place. The problem with that is he wasn't able to get any phone calls from home. He wasn't able to get mail from home, which really actually set up a lot of this problem. So after he moves in with me, like 2 weeks later, he comes home and he's like, Pops, I went to get my medicine refilled today, and I found out my insurance has been cut off. I'm like, okay, Danny, it's not a big deal. He's like, no, you don't understand, Pops. I need this medicine. You know, he told me he needed this medicine. It was risperidone, which is an atypical antipsychotic, which has a known suicidal risk from withdrawals. I was like, okay, Danny, how much is it? He tells me it's $250. For the record, I've looked this up after the fact, and it would have costed us $25 in Canada for the same exact medication. Well, I tell him, well, Danny, we don't have that kind of money. We'll try to come up with it. In the meantime, you have your therapist appointment in a couple of weeks. I'm sure she can help you out. What I wasn't aware of is those suicidal risks typically manifest in 2 weeks when the chemical imbalance is at its most severe. So anyway, he posts his final goodbye wish on Facebook on April 9th, saying that he super glued his seatbelt shut and decided death by drowning because he couldn't get above the pain. Said goodbye to his 2 children and drove his truck into the Mohawk River. I saw his post instantly. I screamed out to my wife what was going on. I jumped in my car because there was a picture of him overlooking the water from the cab of his truck. I live 5 minutes from Saratoga Lake, so that's where I assumed he was. So I ran down to the lake hoping to save him. It wasn't until I got back to the house when the police were here that told me where he was. The fact that Fidelis Care did this over a $20 missed payment. Oh, I failed to mention that. He called Fidelis to find out what happened, and he had missed a $20 payment. He was on the Managed Medicaid program, part of the ACA. The Managed Medicaid program is the program set up for the poorest and the sickest among us. They receive millions and millions of tax dollars and subsidies every single year, our tax dollars, to provide care. Fidelis is owned by Centene. Centene is a mass conglomerate that made $60.1 billion and had a 24% growth after adding Managed Medicaid. They're being sued in Iowa for doing the same exact thing. This is their standard method of operation. This is how they make profit. This is what they have to do to stay in business. Now, our next ACA plan is to expand this and require 97% of Americans to be committed to a contract through a corporation, much like Centene, that can still have high deductibles, high copays, so forth and so on. But as to how I got involved through Twitter, 2 days after Danny did this, I was headed out to buy clothes for the funeral coming up. And I tweeted out in pain exactly what happened. And within 2 weeks, there was 37,000 retweets. I tweeted out to 35 followers. 2 of them happened to be Medicare for All activists. And they each had about 10 to 12,000 followers. So between those 2 activists, got 37,000 retweets. Within, I think it was 2 days, Ro Khanna, which is the co-chair of Bernie's campaign in California, had been reached through a couple of other people through a long string of events and had reached out to me. He addressed Danny's story on the House floor within 2 weeks of Danny passing away. So yes, you can definitely reach our politicians through Twitter. And it's not just Danny's story alone. We lose 68,000 people per year, according to the Way to CEO study, because they can't access the health care that they need when they need it. That's 262 lives every single day. The coronavirus has taken 200 Americans, give or take a few. Not that any one of those people are not important, but 200 lives, and it's a massive pandemic, and it is. But we ignore 262 lives every single day. And they all have families, just like Danny did. They all have loved ones. They all have stories. They might not be as horrific, but some are worse.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. I came onto Twitter a couple months after you, and like you're someone who I watch to see how it's done, to see how you move and how you've been using the platform. So yeah. So
to be honest, Katie,
yeah.
I'm totally ignorant on Twitter. I'm still trying to figure out how to do searches.
Yeah. we both have our own strengths then.
I'm a bit more of a bulldog, I guess, and I'm not afraid to throw it out there. I mean, I say right on my Twitter page, I'm just a dad, I'm just the average guy next door.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't be quiet. I mean, maybe I'm that annoying guy next door wearing his work boots and shorts mowing his lawn, but I'm trying to make sure that my son's story is not ignored.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being here today for the
of course
for this event. Yeah,
we're all in this together, right?
Exactly. Not me, us. So so Twitter has given gives activists and gives people who otherwise there's not a natural forum for our stories to be heard, gives us a place for us to share them and for us to try and get the people who need to hear those stories for the people who are in power. Twitter is the way we can kind of direct those stories straight to them, by adding them and by learning the things we're about to do. So I guess so a part of what I mean by that is, okay, so I mentioned before that most of the senators and assembly people don't have a lot of followers. What that means, and also almost all of them have like between 4 and 7 people who work for them on their staff. So what that means is if I tweet at a senator with 1,000 followers, he gets a notification that says I tweeted at him. And then if Scott comes behind me and retweets me, it only takes him like one physical second to press the button to retweet that tweet. But then that senator who was added in the initial tweet gets another notification about the thing I said initially. And if 20 other people retweet that thing throughout the day, the state senator who only has 1,000 followers will get 20 different notifications all on one tweet about single payer healthcare. And that that may be all of the notifications they get in a day, therefore are about passing the New York Health Act. So like the couple of, there have been senators the state senator for SUNY Downstate, the hospital where I was working, I tried for 3 months to get a meeting with him. I tweeted at him, a bunch of other people retweeted it, and the next day his office called me and said, "Hi, when would you like to meet?" Because the state senator only gets so much action on social media in a day, and if all of it is about one issue, then it creates the impression, because it is true, that this is what is important to their constituents, this is what the word is on the street, and this is what that person should be paying attention to. So Scott just said, people tweeting about the New York Health Act, if you tag people who would like to retweet it, who have a lot of followers, that's a great method. So by Scott has 5,000 followers and I have 1,000 followers. If you have none, and you're tweeting about the New York Health Act and you at us, we'll see it and can retweet it and get it more out there. So today now we're going to start actually doing things. I think by nature of you being on this Zoom call, you're at a computer with internet. So there are 3 important skills I want for us all to walk away with today. The first is to know who your elected representatives are and how to get in touch with them on social media. The second is, and kind of a part of that is we're going to find out whether or not they support the New York Health Act. And if they don't, we're going to ask them to. And if they do, we're going to thank them and ask them to prioritize it. We're going to learn how to support established Twitter activists, so people like me and Scott. And we are going to learn some techniques to try and pressure the New York Health Act holdouts and get them to flip their votes. So the first thing that we're going to do, or that we need to know, is who your representatives are. And so if you live in New York City, the easiest way is to go to mygov.ny or mygovnyc.org. Yeah. And if you live outside of New York City, you have to use 3 different websites: one to find your senator, one to find your assemblyperson, one to find your congressperson. And I just sent those through. So while we're chatting, if you don't already know who represents you, go ahead and look them up. And the two people who we are most concerned about, or the two representatives who are most relevant to what we're talking about today, are your state assembly person and your state senator. So again, your congressperson can only help with things on the federal level, on the national level, and right now the nation is a shit show. So we're gonna be looking at and focusing on our two state reps, the state senator and state assembly person. So after you find out who your state senator and assembly person are, I want you to follow them across every social media platform you use. And if you're running focus on Twitter now, but after this session, you can go back and follow them on Instagram and Twitter, or Instagram and Facebook. Yeah. So and the reason why I want you to be following your reps on all of these platforms is because it's super important that you know who's representing you in Albany and what they're doing. Some senators and assembly people, especially here in New York City, are amazing and on the ball and speaking out on these issues in every way that you would want them to. And some senators are pussyfooting around and equivocating on matters of life and death for New Yorkers. And so you're not going to know if you have one of the good ones or one of the bad ones unless you're paying attention to the things they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And if your representative is not representing you in a way that is in line with your values, now is the time to get involved with the upcoming elections. Both state senators and assembly people in New York are 2-year terms. So we have the chance to flip everything this November. And now is the time to get involved and go forward. Then the second thing, so once you know who they are, now we'll figure out whether or not they already support the New York Health Act. So the way that we're going to do that is by going to newyorksenate.gov. Scott, I have a slide later on for the specific, so we can follow everybody who's pro New York Health Act and challenging a Republican. So we're gonna go to nysenate.gov, and all y'all can see the screen, right? So then we're gonna go to bills and laws. Then we're going to search bills. And if you forget how, like, the exact reference, almost always if you Google the insulin bill New York, it's gonna come up. You'll be able to find it. I just wanted to show you how to use the official website for future reference. So here we're gonna put the New York Health Act, search, and it's the third one down. I know just because I've been here before, but you can really just read through them all. Provides for the establishment of the New York Health Plan. Click. All right, and so once we get here, you'll see Gustavo Rivera is the chair of the Senate Health Committee, and he is the sponsor of the New York Health Act. And then when you come down here, you can see all of the co-sponsors. So what a co-sponsor means is essentially they are voting yes in advance for the legislation. We don't want to bring anything, you don't want to bring a law up for a vote that you want to pass that you don't, if you don't know if you have the votes, because if it gets voted down, then it's a whole complicated thing to ever reattempt it again. So what activists have been doing for years now is to ask senators and assembly people to sign on as co-sponsors of the bill. And that essentially they are committing to the public that if it were to come up for a vote, they would vote in the affirmative. And if you see, oh, this looks like it has a lot of co-sponsors, exactly, we're only one short of having enough we need to pass the whole thing. So now that you looked up your Senate and Assembly person, so I want you to look through here and see, do you see your senator? If so, they support the New York Health Act. If not, they don't. And then to find out if your Assembly person supports the bill, you're gonna come here where it says see the Assembly version of the bill, click sponsored by Gottfried. He is the chair of the Assembly Health Committee. And then you can see all of the additional co-sponsors here. And we've long had the majority in the Assembly to get the New York Health Act passed. So you can look through and see if your Assembly person is signed on here. Now this skill, I guess I'm showing you to look up a bill and see whether your person is on it or not. This is going to be super important as things are moving really quickly with things with the pandemic. If you hear of an emergency funding bill and you want it to get it passed, this is how to look up whether or not your person is supporting it or not. If you hear of a bill that you really don't want to pass and you think is a terrible idea, this is how to find out whether the person representing you is supporting it or not, so that you can get in touch with them and say, hey, I see you're not on this and I want you to be, or I see you are on this and I don't want you to be. I'm your constituent. Do what I say, I'm your boss. So that's how we look that up. All right. So now we're going to get more into the tweets. So I just wanted to take, like, for people who are brand new to Twitter, or for people who are old to Twitter, I just want to take a second to break down the difference in thinking between how most people use Twitter and how activists use Twitter, or how we're going to use Twitter for activism. So normally the normal way to approach Twitter is you try and say clever or insightful things so people follow you, so you can keep saying clever and insightful things and, get the validation of people liking the clever, insightful things that you've said. When activists are using Twitter, or when folks like Scott and I are using Twitter, it's much more like Fidelis Care did something wrong and we need to bring attention and accountability to what Fidelis Care is doing. The hospital where I worked had done something wrong and we need to bring attention and accountability to what that hospital was doing. And the people who we need to get in touch with to help us out with those things are not folks we can just call on the phone. They're state senators, they're Congress people, they're folks with TV shows, they're folks with radio shows. So we are less trying to just get a following to have a following. We are trying to specifically get in touch with these people, and if people follow us in the meantime, cool. But it's more like who's going to see whose notifications are going to ding by what we're tweeting, and less what the masses are going to see as far as our clever and insightful tweets. So for our very first time tweeters, go ahead and we're gonna learn how to put out write your first tweet ever. And feel free to say whatever you want to say or to change the wording. But if that makes you nervous and you just wanna use something scripted, I'm gonna copy paste this to you. And so how to tweet is when you go to Twitter, you're going to press this blue button to write a tweet. You type in the thing that you want to say. Boop, boop, boop. I'll just copy paste what I had before. It's not safe to travel to Albany and protest in person, so today I made a Twitter account to tell Governor Cuomo, Andrew Stewart-Cousins, and Carl Hastie. Senator Andrew Stewart-Cousins is the Speaker of the Senate, and Carl Hastie is the Speaker of the Assembly. No Medicaid cuts, no Article 6 cuts, protect Medicaid, pass New York Health. So everybody who is brand new to Twitter, you can put that in and tweet. And I'm not going to tweet this myself because I'm not brand new to Twitter. It wouldn't make sense for me. But go ahead and tweet that. And then while you're at it, if you can copy and paste your Twitter handle into the chat box, that way we're going to be able to follow one another. And then we can retweet one another to boost the thing we just did. So I'm going to exit out of my, discard my new tweet. All right. So can one of our newbies, can you either unmute yourself or type into the chat box if how you're doing? Where are you at so far? You found your people, you found them on Twitter. What do you need help with? Clarissa followed me. I just followed you back. And if as soon as when I get all of your Twitter handles, I'll do like it's Friday, and when a Twitter convention is Follow Friday, where you tweet out and recommend who people should follow. So once I have all of your handles, I'll tweet out like, these people join Twitter to do health activism. You should follow them. So thanks, Clarissa. I got you. All right, so all right, so we'll go ahead to the next step, and then please unmute yourself or let me know if we're going too fast and you have any questions. But now that once you are following your representatives on social media, if they are a co-sponsor of the New York Health Act, just take a second to like scroll back and see the kind of things they've been tweeting about in the past week, because a handful of them in the past week or two have put out calls to say, with the coming coronavirus, now more than ever, we need to pass the New York Health Act. So I'm thinking specifically Assemblymember Felix Ortiz put out a call, and Senator Gustavo Rivera, the chair of the Health Committee and the sponsor, put out a call. So if one of those two people are your representatives, then just go ahead and say, thank you so much for being a leader on this issue. I'm a constituent. You're doing a great job. But assuming if they are a co-sponsor but have not really said anything about the New York Health Act in the past couple of weeks, then we are going to tweet at them and ask them to speak out on the New York Health Act. So this is just, again, these are sample tweets. Please tweak them in any which way makes the most sense for you. But the first one I sent, I just copy paste to the chat box, is a tweet you can use if they are a co-sponsor, saying thank you for being co-sponsor. Now is the time to get it passed. And then the second tweet I'm sending is if you are represented by a Republican or any of the Democratic holdouts, to say, I'm a constituent. With the worsening COVID-19 outbreak, there couldn't be a more important time for every New Yorker to have health care. In a pandemic, we are only as safe as the least covered New Yorker past New York Health. With the 1 to 2 word descriptor, use it, don't use it. A lot of people like to say, like, I'm a nurse, I'm a doula, I'm a mother, I'm a human, I'm a something, just to like humanize and contextualize the request that you're making. Feel free to do it. Feel free to exit out if it doesn't feel genuine to you. Yeah. Yeah, Well, yeah, watch out for bots that exist, and just I generally don't engage with uh like people who are mean to me and have less than 100 or 100 followers. Um Alrighty, fantastic. I see you and following you. So if you don't like Twitter, everything I just showed you, you can do on whatever social media platform you like, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are, and your representative is also. It's just good to develop a habit of you see a bill, look up whether they're on it or not. If they're on it and you like it, say thank you. If not, ask them to support it. And that gives them a sense of where their constituents are at, what they're thinking, what's important to them. Politicians want to move in the direction that their constituents are going because they want to stay in power and they want you to vote for them. So if they see their constituents are tweeting or Facebooking or Instagramming about things all the time, those are the things that they're going to make important. So okay, so now I wanted to teach a skill of how to essentially like boost and help out folks like Scott and I who use Twitter on the daily to try and get people's attention. So essentially the technique is follow us, and when you see us tweeting at people or when we are replying to somebody, retweet the reply or retweet the tweet where we have added somebody. So all right, so the list I have right here are the most, if you go look at like the past New York Health Act hashtag, about like 80% of tweets to pass the New York Health Act are by these 12 or 13 Twitter accounts. So like we're the folks to follow for this particular issue. So I just sent you their handles through, and you can go ahead and follow them. Another thing you can do is make a list of people who you would want to keep tabs of to be able to signal boost them. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second, or I'm going to show you how to do that by, there we go. All right. Now I can do it. Okay, so now I'm in a different account. And this is like the first Twitter handle I made. So what I wanted to show you is how to follow somebody's list. So what a list is it when you essentially like you're making a little mini Twitter. So for all of you all who like just came on Twitter, if you follow 10 people, you're just going to see the things that those 10 people are tweeting about. If you follow 1,000 people, you're going to see the things that all 1,000 of those people are tweeting about. So what happens when you have when you're following 1,000 people, if you just want to zoom in and look at only the tweets of a handful of people, is you can put them on a list, and that Twitter list essentially makes like a mini Twitter that only has those like the subsect of people who you want, like who you're following or not following, but put on that list. Does that kind of make sense? So what I have done here is subscribed. So under my Brooklyn Grows account, I have several different lists, one of New York Health Act activists and another of New York Health Act holdouts. And how I got there was I went to the Brooklyn Grow. So I went to my file. I clicked this ellipsis here. I looked at view lists. then I hover over if you click here, it's just going to take me back to my profile. So click the actual title of the list, New York State legislators. And then you'll see here I have like a bunch of New York State legislators that I've put. And if you click subscribe, now you have access to that whole list. So what I want you to do is to go through and subscribe to my New York Health Activist list, which has all the most active New York Health Act folks. And I want you to subscribe to the New York Health Act holdouts list. So you're click on there, and then you can click subscribe. So the one cool thing you can do with lists, all right, so I'm just going to go back to my my Brooklyn Grows account. So one nice thing you can do with a list is all of the New York Health Act holdouts. I can see everything they've been tweeting about and just them. And or I can go and look and see what are the activists tweeting about. So I want to follow a couple of the activists and or subscribe to that list. And then we're just gonna do a little practice of going through and looking for the tweets we want to retweet. So let's see. All right. So stay focused. We need President Sanders now more than ever. I think that that's true. But I'm not tweeting for my timeline. I'm tweeting for who I want to see these tweets. So I'm not retweeting that one. Keep scrolling. All right. All right. Here we have Carlin Cowan. CPC statement. On New York Speaker Carl Jones and relief plan, it's even more necessary to shut down. All right, that's not really trying to get in touch with the speaker and the council, so I'm going to scroll past. All right, here we go. If the governor says we need masks, my team will help make. Oh, okay, that one already got seen. All right, here we go. Question: how much personal protective equipment could we buy with our healthcare professionals with 18 million? CC Mike Bloomberg. Okay, so this one by Win, we're going to like and retweet because we would want Mike Bloomberg to see, we want his money and him to participate in this action. So it's, again, I'm not retweeting this because I want necessarily my followers to see this tweet. I'm retweeting this because when I did, when Win tweeted this at Bloomberg, Bloomberg got a ding. And when I retweeted at Bloomberg, Bloomberg gets another ding. And if y'all come behind me, it'll get ding, 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 ding. And so essentially the theory / technique I'm trying to teach folks and make widely, like, to become normal within the activist community is essentially each retweet is a little like knock on the door. And if you just hear on your front door, is that a knock? Is that not a knock? Who knows? You're not going to go check. If you hear this and then 20 minutes later another, are you going to go check? No. But if you get a bunch of people just retweeting, and it's always in your notifications, then that's when we get politicians to pay attention to us. And that's why it's so great. All y'all who don't have any followers, it really doesn't matter, because when you retweet at somebody, it doesn't, when they get the notification, it doesn't say this person only has 2 followers. It just says they retweeted it at them. So if all y'all come behind me and keep retweeting this at Mike Bloomberg's going to get a lot of notifications at one time to say, hey, maybe one way to use your money is to help us get protective gear. All right. Ooh, the next one. Instead of enacting billionaire tax, New York Governor Cuomo's Medicaid redesign team is voting on draconian cuts to Medicaid. Why cut healthcare instead of raising revenues? That's a great question. And we want people in Governor Cuomo's office to see that we agree with hand in hand and that we don't think that there should be any Medicaid cuts. So we're going to retweet this one again, because not because necessarily we want our followers to see it, but because we want the person who operates Governor Cuomo's account to see it, the person who operates Carl Hastings and the person who operates Andrea Stewart Cousins' account to see it. They're going to get, the second I retweeted it, they both got a notification saying, essentially voting on this tweet about no Medicaid cuts. Y'all get the general idea. Retweet whatever you want to retweet, but what we're looking for and how we are looking to support various activists is by taking the things that they have, taking the things they have typed out and just giving it a boost to whoever they were trying to direct that message to. Let's see. A large part in getting noticed was due in part to using the MSM against themselves. Okay, would you mind just explaining that a little bit more, Scott?
Sure. What I did was, let's say CNN, I would follow a bunch of news outlets, CNN, Fox. I'm not concerned about their agenda. My agenda wasn't to reach them, but their subscribers. Every time they send out a tweet, they've got 3-5 million followers that has the opportunity to see that. If you get on their tweet quick enough and can get enough likes and retweets, your tweet will be on the top of their tweet for the first response. So therefore, anybody seeing CNN's story about how bad Medicare for all is, the first response they see is Danny's story saying, no, you're wrong. This is what we have with our current system. People see that, and the more people see it, the more they like it, the more people have the chance to see it because they're retweeting it to their followers.
Exactly. So it if you get to if you see somebody with a ton of followers just tweeted something a minute or two ago, you kind of have a golden opportunity to reply to that tweet. And then a tweet from somebody with a lot of followers that gets a lot of response, the algorithm that Twitter uses of which response to put first is not by the time, it's by likes and retweets. But by being there first, you're going to collect the most likes and retweets because folks are going to open up the tweet from the person with a lot of followers. So if you see that happening, awesome. See if you can get into the replies. And then also, not everybody is gonna, Scott and I are probably on Twitter hours every day looking for specifically to look for these opportunities because this is what
I was going to say, my first week, I spent probably 20 hours a day just refreshing Twitter.
Yeah.
And when I say spamming, I saw that my one original tweet was catching traction, so I copied and pasted that tweet onto a bunch of other tweets to gain attention for that one tweet because that was what was catching people's attention.
Exactly.
That's what spamming is, and I'm pretty sure what got my tweet deleted was when I spammed Britney Spears because she posted a baby picture. That's spamming.
Yes. Well, we try to make it somewhat related, but we're just trying to get the word out there. So folks like Scott and I are out there all the time to try and catch those opportunities. If you're newish to Twitter, the way to help us out is when you see that Scott and I have responded to somebody, retweet us, because then it helps boost it in the algorithm and helps get the word out that way. Let's see. Okay, so all right, so yeah, we already talked about pretty much all of this. So why should you do it? We already talked about that too. I use Les Scott's tweets as examples. All right, so if you're overwhelmed with everything, like if you're overwhelmed with Twitter right now and with the idea, like you essentially, what I told you right now, if all you did right now is what I have suggested, which is get in touch with your own representative on a somewhat regular basis about things that you care about and about the things that are happening in the news, and getting on Twitter a couple times a week, like following activists and boosting the things that the Twitter activists are doing to help us get the word out. If you do those two things, like if you're overwhelmed, just doing those two things are going to be super helpful and multiply our capacity to do health justice activism. But if you're not overwhelmed, stay tuned, because I've got one more skill for you, and that is how to pressure the New York Health Act holdouts and try and get them to flip the vote. There's the two ways I use to try and flip the holdouts. I'm essentially I'm like the holdout troll on Twitter. So the two mechanisms I use to try and do that, the first is I look for things they are already tweeting about that have something to do with health or with constituent needs, and I'll tie that to the New York Health Act. So I think I did that somewhat recently. Let's go to my profile, tweets and replies. It wasn't that long ago that Monica Martinez, who is a state senator out in Long Island, today the legislator, in a bipartisan fashion, passed a bill to provide paid sick leave. I will continue to do what is needed during the pandemic. So I responded to Senator Martinez, we need the New York Health Act, pass New York Health. Very simple, but it was the only response that she got on her tweet. And I think it's, really the more of us who are looking, essentially not letting the holdouts get away with their bullshit. Senator James Skoufis, who is one of the holdouts, was on Twitter a while back trying to get credit because he had written a bill that would give free health insurance to people who give up a kidney as a living donor. So we have a bill we have a bill ready to go that with his support could pass and give healthcare to everybody in the state. And instead he wants to say, look how cool of a senator I am. I wrote a bill that would give health insurance to people who give up a kidney. So essentially one of the two ways is to follow the holdouts, see what they're tweeting, and then tweet and then connect the things that they're saying to arguments for the New York Health Act. So I just sent you the link to the tweet that I tweeted at Monica Martinez. So you can just, if you follow that and retweet it, it's going to it means that at 9:40 p.m. on March 18th, she got a notification from me to pass the New York Health Act. And if you guys retweet it now, she gets a bunch more notifications to pass the New York Health Act. And then the other way I target or I try to put pressure on the holdouts is to whenever I see a good argument for why we need single payer, is to tweet at, like, is to copy paste their handles and tweet at them. So I'm copying and pasting their handles to you all right now, so you can do that same thing. But essentially, I bookmarked some tweets earlier. Well, let's just see what's in my normal feed. All right, so I refreshed it, and the first thing is from our healthcare hero, Gustavo Rivera. To be clear, in a global pandemic, the most vulnerable, many of the Medicaid patients will be the ones most severely impacted. This strikes at them directly, and this dude simply refuses to make billionaires pay. All right, so I'm going to retweet that with a comment at so I'm gonna put this to at Governor Cuomo because it's at the Cuomo, and I'm gonna include all 9 of the New York Health Act holdouts. And right now is the time to hashtag pass NY Health. Where make billionaires pay. No Medicaid cuts in a pandemic. Make billionaires pay. Now is the time to pass New York Health. All right. Oh, thank you so much, Scott. One thing I've been working on is like a Twitter team of people who I can like just send tweets I need boosted to. So good to know I can include you on that. And same thing with all you all. If there's like a certain tweet that you really want attention paid to, send, like, just DM it to me. I'm always happy to boost you. All right. So more or less, like, the second way to target the holdouts is just retweeting things at them that are good arguments for single payer healthcare. All right. Oof. Oh, awesome. I see. Okay. So, Thais, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Miss Williams, fantastic job.
Yes, you did get it right.
Oh, it's Thais?
Thais, yes.
Thais.
Yeah.
Thais, perfect job. One little Twitter idiosyncrasy is if you at somebody at the start of your tweet, like this right here, what it does is it sends it just to James. Like, everyone here is going to see a notification, but it will probably come up like you're just trying to send it to Senator Skoufis. So if you see on the thing I just tweeted that starts at Governor Cuomo, I put this period there. So I put that period. That tells, it's like essentially it's code. So if the first thing in your tweet is somebody's handle, it looks at it like a reply and puts it in your tweets and reply feed instead of your main feed. If you put the period there, it just indicates that you want it on your main feed.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I suck at this, but okay.
No, I'm super, my notifications are growing as we're doing this. I'm stoked. So yeah, so I'm gonna retweet what Thais wrote. I don't know if this person is working with us today, but even somebody retweeted me as we were doing this. Implement Medicare for all around the country and stop the BS about it doesn't work in other countries for insurance donors. All right, I like that. I'm gonna retweet it. What else? I'm just going, so let's go to, so we'll wrap up pretty soon. I just will show you the kind of the one last thing, and that is our hash, like the main hashtag to use to for the New York Health Act. There are a couple of them. Okay, Scott just wrote about the other infuriating thing is no edit, but I'll just show you. There isn't an edit button, and it's definitely a bummer if you like just said of instead of if. I think the reason why the advantage is that people can't say something really shitty and then edit it and be like, I didn't say something shitty. You have to stand by what you say. And I use a Scott tweet here as an example of you can't edit on Twitter. So what most people, if they see a little typo, they just know that there's no edit and they'll forgive you. But another thing you can do is respond to your initial tweet with the correction. And I just love that Scott is like so good at Twitter that even when he makes a correction, he adds Fidelis Care and again puts a thing in their notifications saying, hey, I'm watching you. I can admit to my mistakes. Can't you? I just thought was some next level Twitter genius tweeting. And I pulled that out here for an example. So if you just search the Pass New York Health Act hashtag, you're going to see many of the yourselves now and many of the beautiful activists who I put on that on the initial who I sent through your things and put on the list. And then we can just while I have you all here, I'm just gonna go through and keep, Ursula wrote, great, you can enroll in a private plan that will rip off taxpayers and not guarantee you what you need. Yeah, that's no good. Ursula wrote this fantastic argument for why we should pass New York Health. So I'm going to retweet it and put at the holdouts to make sure the holdouts see this fantastic argument for passing New York Health. Pass New York Health. I'm just keeping it simple for now. Communities need more than COVID testing and care. Don't leave other healthcare needs behind in the pandemic. No Medicaid cuts. Exactly. I like that. I'm going to retweet it and I'm going to make sure that the holdouts see it because that's who we need to know that it's time to pass New York Health Act. And I'm just going to copy all these hashtags that they have. Oops, it won't let me copy paste. Copy paste the hashtags first.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Of course, please do.
So since you're in Brooklyn and your first one would be, so do I put Andy in front of mine's or what do I do?
What do you mean?
Okay, so all right. So when you retweet, I see the first one that you always have is Como, right? So since I'm in the Bronx, do I put my person that's in the chair in front first?
No. So if you live in the Bronx, then I'm almost positive. Who do you know who your state senator is? Oh, I know yours is Benjamin, right? Or Bailey.
Bailey, yes, Bailey.
Yeah. So Bailey is signed on to the New York Health Act. So I would say like once, you know, at one point today or to, you know, at some point send Bailey a note via social media to thank him for being on it and to ask him like to prioritize getting this passed in the next couple of days. You know, so all of these senators see each other. So if Bailey gets, you know, 10 calls in a day to say pass the New York Health Act, he's going to see James Skoufis and Gargrin and these people who are not signed on yet and say, hey, my constituents keep calling me to thank me for being on the New York Health Act. When are you going to sign on so we can get it done? But besides thanking him once, we don't want to pester the legislators who are already doing the things we want. We want to pester the legislators who are not signed on yet. So all of the, like, what I'm saying is if you see a tweet that's a good argument for universal health care, we want to, like, no use tweeting that to the senators who are already on board. We want to tweet that to the senators who are not on board, which are the 9 holdouts.
Got it. All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
And that's the same with any bill going forward. Like, you want to look for who's not on it and ask them.
This room was actually Danny's room when he was staying here.
Mm-hmm.
So I converted it to my Medicare for All room. Give you a quick view on the pictures on the wall here. I'd show you the rest of my office, but it is not worth it viewing.
I'll show people my office as long as I don't point the camera to my desk or the floor, but you can see the shelves are nice.
That's where I'm at. Everything behind the computer is not good.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining in on this little teach-in. Please let me know if you have any Twitter questions going forward. If you want to join my Twitter team, so be like one of the people who I send you a DM of a link to a tweet if I need it, like that I want specific attention being sent to, just let me know and I'll put you on board with that. And please, I'm gonna try and tighten up the PowerPoint presentation and get better at doing this, and to do more of these going forward, because it looks like we may be in a physical distancing, no in-person protesting position for a while. So please, next time you see that I'm having a thing like this, tell your friends who aren't on Twitter, like, I know you don't want to be on Twitter, but for now it's really important, you know, like, until we can protest again, Twitter is where it's going to be at for making our voices heard. So as much as you can get, recruit folks, get people interested, get them signed on. I'll do as many of these types of teach-ins as we can to get those skills out there to activists. And so hopefully we can create, you know, like a good online presence for this bill.
I can't wait for this virus to get over it, because I've got to finish going back to looking our lawmakers in the eye.
Yeah.
Just not being able to lobby them is killing me.
Yeah.
That was my big promise, and I need to get back at it.
Yeah. And Scott, I will, I'm working on trying to set up Zoom meetings. So if it's a legislator where we have overlapping interests, I'll let you know, maybe loop you in.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'll hang out for like 15 extra seconds if someone's trying to type something before they let me go. And thank you everyone so much for being a part of this.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go feed my granddaughter now. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye.